Hey guys, my name is Ali Ashqi and I'm gonna be your instructor for next few minutes. I'm gonna talk about Resolver, one of Angular guards. So let's just see what is Resolver. Before I'm talking about Resolver guard in Angular, I want to open some issue here. For example, we have a site which doctor going to upload some info and we get info about disease, for example, fever, brain, or blah blah blah. If we just click on this brain tumor, we get some info about that. But if we want to see what is going on under the hood, and if we open just developer tools, we get some error here. If we just see, it say cannot read properties of undefined and to fill these photos. And if we just Google this error, we see what's going on here. If we just going to Stack Overflow, it say how to avoid this kind of error. Maybe we get the answer. It's just telling us if we using this question mark, we get the best result, and it's going to avoid null values. But how about if we have a several line of codes and we just forget to utilize this question mark? Is that the best idea always to utilize this question mark? Of course not. I think there are better ways, and we will see in the future. And I want to open another issue. If we just back to our site and I just clean up my errors here, if I just enter another number which is not exist in our database, for example, a large number like that, and if I just put enter, here we go. We see again we have error here. This said photo URL and photos are not, and we are in a page which is not in a good shape, because if that info is not exist, we should navigate to another page, and we have it could be better if we just give info that data does not exist. So all those are possible by resolver. So resolver is that, and we can handle our issues by this guard, and we're gonna take a look at what is resolver. Now we want to see what is resolver guard in Angular. Imagine we are in a component, and to the router outlet we want to go to this B component member slash for URL. And to this B component we want to get data from API, and it's possible with ng on init. But while we are going to get data from API, because it's async and it's gonna be observable, our view has already rendered, so we don't have data, and our fields in our components may get this undefined or null error which we see before. So after we rendered view, we get data from API, and again we send that to the view, but we still have these errors in console. So what is the solution? The solution could be resolver. So instead of this B component, we are going to resolver, and to the resolver, we're gonna get data from API. Now we have all the data in resolver, so we can decide whether go to the B component or we back to the A component. For example, we don't have a data and we don't want to illustrate it to user, so we back to A component. But we imagine we have data and we want to go to B component. So in ng on init, we get this data from resolver, but because we don't call an async method or unobservable, so we don't get this trouble of rendering view. So we get data first, and then we are going to render our view. So by this technique, our problem with null or undefined is solved. And in addition, if we don't want to navigate to B component and we have a falsy and invalid uh, data, for example, member 100, which is not a valid user, so we can show him a component.
Okay, now we are in member slash for URL. So if I back to my code and if I going to find these rows, and here we go. In these rows we are going to open member detail component. So if I'm opening this member detail component and going to ng on init, we can observe that this user is going to fill with this user service, which is getting data from database, or better to say API, with this function. So if we back to our member detail component, what we are going to do is that we want to delete this line of codes and write on resolver. So how we can create a resolver? I've already created a folder which is named resolvers, and I have some sample of resolvers, but I want to create a resolver for this member detail component together. So I'm just going to this resolver folder and I'm going to open an integrated terminal here. So
For guys who are utilizing Angular latest version, I mean 11 or upper, they can easily generate a template by typing this code ngg resolver and the name of the resolver we want, member detail. And this will give us a template. But for guys who are not utilizing Angular 11 or upper, they have to handle it manually. So I just handle this manually too. So I'm going to resolver folder and I'm gonna create a new file and I will name it as member, or better just say that member detail dot resolver dot ts. So this is give us a blank and empty ts file, and we are going to type our code.
we go, guys, we say export class and it's member detail resolver, and it's gonna implement resolve. This resolve is from Angular router and it's generic. If you see it's type of T, we should specify the type. So if we back to our member detail component, this user service from get user by this returning iUser interface. So if I go to this get user by ID, it's returning iUser. So here in our resolve, we should say that it's type of iUser. Then we should implement this resolve method here. If I press Ctrl dot, implement. So it's give us a method resolve, and this is the router activated route snapshot, and it's returning iUser or observable iUser. or promise iUser. Because I want to return an observable iUser, I just omit these extra codes here. I don't need this state. So here I say that I need some extra service, so I have to implement constructor. So in this constructor I'm gonna inject some service, private user service, because in our member detail component we had this user service, so I need this user service and its type of private user service. So here I said private user service is type of user service. Here we go. Then I go back to here and say return this dot user service dot get user by ID. I need ID, so I say that const ID is equal to ID, and from this activated root, activated snapshot root, I get ID root dot params, and I get ID. Then here we can pipe and see what's going on here. In this pipe we say error. Oh my god, this brings me console.error. No, error, and it's lambda expression. These errors should give us some features to see if we can't encounter and face with error, how should this handle. So we say that if we have error, show us some alert. For example, we can here get some alertify services. We go guys and we bring another service, private alert service, and it's type of alertify service. Okay, you can use your own alerting service. For me, it's alertify service. Here I just say this dot alert service dot error. We give some error here. For example, there is no, or better say error on getting info. Okay, then here in the next line we should decide whether go to member detail component or not, because we encounter with error. We should back to our current page, which is member detail, member component. So we should bring another service for routing. Here we just type private route, and it's gonna be type of router. My auto import here not working, but it's from Angular router. So instead of this router snapshot, I bring just router. Then here we say router. Did I say just route? it's better just say router dot navigate. Here we open parenthesis, and in this parenthesis we give slash member. That's it, that's all. At the end we return something that we don't get this error here, so we say return off. It's gonna import from RxJS observable and off because we want to return null and we don't want to get error. Here we go, our resolver is ready. Now we should handle it in our router, and we say this resolver we had already wrote it's gonna use for another component which is member detail. How we can handle that? We should go to routes here. So here, if we just press Ctrl B to see full codes here, and I want to decorate this member detail component with another guard, which is type of resolve. So I say resolve and the name of our resolve, and we put a name for this resolver, and it should be really important because we will utilize it in our component. For example, if we say this is user, in our component we have to utilize it as user too. So we say member users. Okay, then we say that is type of our current resolver, which is member detail resolver. So we write member detail resolver. Okay, and one more thing, in our member detail resolver we should say that it's injectable. So because we want to utilize it as a service in another component, and we have to say its type of dependency injection. Okay, and or we can even handle that in app module too. So if we go to in app module, we in the provider section we have to add this resolver. Here we go, that's all. Now we should handle everything in our component, which is member detail component. Now instead of using this service directly in our component, we have to get our data from resolver, and it's possible with active route. So I just eliminate these codes because we want to handle with resolver. So we say this dot active route dot data, because it's observable, so we can subscribe to it. And in this parenthesis we say data, and in this data, which is lambda expression, we want to get users. This dot users is equal to data. So we should see what was the convention. We say here it should be member user, or maybe it's just better just say member user utilizing camel case language. And if I just
copy this member user, and here I put member user. So now everything should be work. I just save all the files which I modified. Then I'm going back to code and see if it's work or not. Okay guys, now it's demo time. What we anticipate is by clicking this in brain tumor we get data and everything work fine. Now we will see if it's work or not. But I get this error I'm getting info, and we should debug our codes and see what's going on. So I open Google Developer Tools and I go into my resolver, which was member detail resolver. I have it here, and if I'm going to this resolve, if I'm putting breakpoint and again I'm refreshing this, here we go, we are in our resolver. But why our data not loaded? It's because we forget to bring our catch error from our XJS operation. I just put error here and I forgot it. When we are using pipe, we have this ability to bring RxJS methods, but I forgot to do that, so I back to my code and I just say catch error and I bring it from RxJS. If I'm going to up, you will see that catch error is from RxJS operator. So I come in here and I cut all this line of codes and put it in this parenthesis. Now everything will work fine. And about navigating, while we get these errors, we expect to navigate to members, but it's not navigated, and it's because we are made the mistakes by this line of code, and I think I should put this after parenthesis. So I save this and I back to my code and see if I'm doing right or not. Yes, it's working. Now if I back to illnesses and if I press CTRL, and if I'm going to this, I expect I shouldn't see any error in my console. If I back to my console, there is no error here. So I did everything right. Now it's time for our second problem. If I just put a large number, for example 100, it's not exist on my database. It's again we see a form which is bit full of error and it's not in a good shape. We want to navigate to members and give it a alarm which is the data is not exist, and we don't want to render this view again. So we back to our code, and here we add another RxJS method which is called map. With this map operator we want to decide for our data. So here we add another if clause, and in this if clause we observe if data is null or not, and we open curly braces, and then we are going to copy this 2 line of code and we paste it here, and here we say there is no such info. And after all, we are going to return our data. Here we go. So now we can back to here, and we're going to test everything. There is no such a data, there is no error in console. If I put this again, we don't have any error in our console. And then if I enter invalid number again, we back to our member list. So this is all about Resolver, and this is very handy, and I hope you guys utilize it in your code. It's very interesting for people who want to have another level of codings, and I really recommend it you guys to have a best practice in your codes, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching this.